I stood in the marble foyer of Belmont's, clutching a small gift wrapped in silver paper, my best dress smoothed down over my knees. My son Trevor's engagement party hummed with laughter from the private dining room ahead. Crystal, my future daughter-in-law, glided toward me with a smile sharp as broken glass. She stopped 3 feet away, her voice loud enough to cut through the piano music. "Mom, this place isn't for you. McDonald's fits you better." 2 security guards materialized beside me, their hands closing around my arms. 30 guests turned to watch. The room went silent except for the clink of champagne glasses and my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. I didn't move when those guards gripped my elbows. Something in me went very still and very calm. I looked past Crystal to the hostess station, where a young woman in a black dress stood frozen, her mouth slightly open. "Could you call the manager, please?" My voice came out steady, almost pleasant. Crystal's laugh rang out like shattering crystal. "Oh, this is precious." She gestured to the crowd of guests now openly staring. "Everyone, please excuse my future mother-in-law. She seems to be having one of her episodes." The other guests whispered behind their hands. I saw women in expensive jewelry lean toward their partners. Men in tailored suits shook their heads with practiced sympathy. My son Trevor stood near the bar, his face flushed, looking anywhere but at me. "Ma'am," one of the security guards said quietly near my ear, "we're going to have to ask you to leave. Let's not make a scene." I smiled. I wasn't making a scene. I was simply standing in a restaurant I had every right to be in. "Call the manager," I repeated to the hostess. "Tell Marcus that Paige is here." Crystal stepped closer, her perfume expensive and cloying. "Marcus doesn't know you, Paige. You're confused. It happens at your age." She turned to address the room, her voice dripping with false compassion. "I'm so sorry, everyone. This is exactly what we've been dealing with. She's been struggling lately." The whispers grew louder. I caught fragments. "Poor thing. How sad. Someone should really help her." Then the office door at the back of the restaurant opened. Marcus Caldwell emerged, tall and distinguished in his dark suit, his silver hair catching the light from the chandeliers. He was 68, same as me, though he carried it differently, with the confidence of a man who'd built an empire. He walked straight toward me, past Crystal, past Trevor, past all the staring guests. When he reached me, he put his arm around my shoulders and kissed my cheek. "Paige," his voice carried through the sudden silence. "It's wonderful to see you." The security guards dropped their hands from my arms and stepped back. Crystal's face went from tan to white to a mottled red in the space of 3 seconds. Marcus turned to address the crowd, his arm still around me. "For those of you who don't know, Paige is my former business partner. 20 years ago, we built Belmont's together from nothing. We started with a food truck on 5th Street and worked 16-hour days for 3 years before we could afford to lease this building." The guests stared. Trevor's mouth hung open. Crystal stood very still, her hands clenched at her sides. "When Paige's husband got sick with cancer," Marcus continued, "she needed to focus on his care. She sold me her shares at a fraction of their value because she's one of the most generous people I've ever known. But she remains on the paperwork as a founding partner. She has lifetime privileges here. Any table, any time, no reservations needed." I felt vindication wash through me, warm and sweet. I watched Crystal's expression, waiting for her to crumble, to apologize, to slink away in shame. But Crystal didn't crumble. She recovered faster than I would have believed possible. Her face transformed, the anger smoothing into concern so practiced it looked genuine. She stepped forward, touching Marcus's arm lightly. "Marcus, that's so kind of you to say." Her voice was gentle, almost loving. "But I need to tell you something, and it breaks my heart." She glanced at me, her eyes swimming with fake tears. "We've been worried about Paige for months now. She's been showing signs of dementia, confusion, memory issues. She often mixes up the past and present." Marcus's arm around my shoulders stiffened slightly. "She tells these wonderful stories," Crystal continued, "about businesses she used to own, people she used to know. Her doctor says it's common for patients to confuse memories, to create narratives that feel real to them." She turned to the crowd, including them in her performance. We love her so much. We just want her to get the help she needs." A murmur of sympathy rippled through the guests. Marcus looked at me, and I saw doubt flicker in his eyes. Crystal pulled out her phone with the smooth confidence of someone who'd planned this moment. She scrolled, then turned the screen toward Marcus. "These are text messages from Trevor. He's been documenting his concerns about his mother's declining mental state for weeks. Look at the dates." Marcus leaned in to read. His expression shifted, became uncertain. I tried to speak, to defend myself, but Crystal kept talking, her voice reasonable and sad. "Just last week, she called Trevor by his father's name. 3 times. She forgot his birthday completely. She claimed she'd paid for renovations on his house, but Trevor has all the receipts. He paid for everything himself." She looked at me with such perfect, compassionate pity that I wanted to scream. "We love you, Paige. We're not trying to hurt you. We're trying to help." Some of the guests nodded. An older woman near the windows dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. A man in a gray suit put his hand over his heart. Marcus, bless him, looked torn. "Paige, is everything all right? Are you feeling okay?" "I'm fine," I said, but my voice sounded defensive, almost shrill. "Marcus, I'm not confused. I was here. We built this place together. You know me." "Of course I do." Marcus patted my shoulder, but the gesture felt patronizing now. "Maybe we should call someone for you. Do you have a doctor we can contact?" Crystal jumped in quickly. "I have her doctor's information right here. Dr. Patricia Hendricks. She's been treating Paige for several months now. Maybe we should give her a call, just to make sure Paige is safe." The room spun slightly. I'd never heard of Dr. Patricia Hendricks. I'd never been treated for dementia. But Crystal said it with such confidence, such documentation, that even I almost doubted myself. Marcus invited everyone to continue with the party. The moment of my triumph evaporated like morning fog. Guests turned back to their conversations, shooting me pitying glances. Trevor approached and took my arm gently, as if I might break. "Mom, let's get you home." His voice was kind but firm, the voice you'd use with a child. "I'm not crazy," I whispered. "I know you're not," he squeezed my arm. "But maybe you should rest." I left Belmont's with my son's hand on my elbow, the silver-wrapped gift still clutched in my hands, feeling not like a respected businesswoman, but like a confused old woman who'd wandered somewhere she didn't belong. Crystal watched me go with a small, satisfied smile playing at the corners of her mouth. 2 days later, Trevor called and asked me to come to his apartment. His voice on the phone was careful, measured, like he was speaking to someone fragile. I drove across town through autumn rain, my hands tight on the steering wheel. The streets were slick with wet leaves. I parked in front of his building, a modern complex with too much glass and steel, the kind of place young professionals lived. Trevor had moved here after his promotion at the firm. When I knocked, Crystal answered. She wore yoga pants and an oversized sweater, looking casual and comfortable, like she already owned the place. "Come in, Paige. We're so glad you're here." The apartment smelled like expensive coffee and vanilla candles. Trevor sat on the gray sectional sofa, a folder on the coffee table in front of him. He stood when I entered, kissed my cheek, and gestured for me to sit in the armchair across from him. "Mom, we need to talk." His eyes wouldn't quite meet mine. Crystal settled beside him, her hand on his knee. She radiated concern, her face arranged in an expression of loving worry. "I've been noticing some changes in you," Trevor said. He picked up the folder, opened it. "Small things at first, but they're adding up. You forgot my birthday last month." "I didn't forget," I interrupted. "I sent you a card and called you on the day." He shook his head slowly. "Mom, my birthday is June 15th. You called me on June 18th and wished me a happy birthday." "No," I said, but uncertainty crept in. Had I gotten the date wrong? No, I was certain. June 15th. I'd marked it on my calendar like I did every year. "And you've been calling me by Dad's name," Trevor continued. "Twice now, once when we met for lunch, and once on the phone last week. I never called you by your father's name." The accusation stung worse than the others. My husband had been dead for 6 years. I would never confuse my son with him. Trevor's expression was patient, pitying. "Mom, you did. I didn't want to upset you by correcting you, but it happened. Crystal leaned forward. There's also the issue with the house renovations page. You told Trevor's sister that you'd paid for his kitchen remodel, but Trevor paid for it himself. All of it. I did help pay, I protested. I gave him $10,000 toward the materials. Trevor pulled papers from the folder. Here are all the receipts, Mom. I paid for everything. There's no record of any check from you. He slid the papers across the coffee table. I looked at them, the numbers swimming. I remembered writing that check. I was certain I had. But the bank statements showed no such withdrawal. Crystal produced more papers. These are from your doctor, Paige, Dr. Hendricks. She diagnosed you 3 months ago with early-stage dementia. I stared at the medical report. My name was typed at the top, Paige Eleanor Hartwell. Birth date correct. The diagnosis was there in clinical language, along with notes about memory loss, temporal confusion, and recommended treatment. I've never seen this doctor, I said. My hands shook holding the paper. I've never been to this office. Memory loss patients often don't remember their appointments, Crystal said gently. It's part of the condition, sweetie. Trevor reached across and took my hand. Mom, I love you. We all do. But we need to make sure you're safe. We need to make sure you're taking care of yourself. Crystal pulled out more papers. Pharmacy receipts showing prescriptions for memory medications filled in my name over the past 3 months. Photos of my kitchen I'd never seen before, showing expired food in the refrigerator and sticky notes covering the counters with reminders about basic tasks. Where did you get these photos? My voice came out as a whisper. Your neighbor, Helen Walsh, took them last week, Crystal said. She's been worried about you too. She gave us a statement. Helen? My friend Helen? We'd known each other for 15 years. We had coffee every Thursday morning. Crystal handed me a notarized document. Helen's signature was at the bottom, along with a statement describing times I'd seemed disoriented, confused, unable to remember conversations we'd had. The room tilted. My own neighbor, my friend, had signed a legal statement questioning my competence. There's one more thing, Crystal said. She exchanged a look with Trevor. We think it might be good if Trevor had power of attorney over your finances. Just temporarily, just to help manage things while you're getting treatment. We wouldn't want any bills to go unpaid or any problems with your investments. The trust fund. The realization hit me like cold water. My parents had left me a trust fund worth $3 million, meant to pass to Trevor's children eventually. I was the trustee. Crystal was after the money. I don't need help managing my finances, I said. Mom, Trevor's voice broke slightly. The trust fund is a lot of money, a lot of responsibility. We're just worried that if you're having these episodes, something might happen to it. You might forget to pay taxes, or make a bad investment, or worse. We're trying to protect you, and protect Dad's grandchildren's inheritance. He meant Crystal's children, future children who didn't exist yet, children with a woman who was clearly manipulating him. I need to go, I said, standing up. The papers fell from my lap. Crystal stood too. Paige, please don't be upset. We're a family. We want to help you. I walked to the door. Trevor followed. Mom, please. Just think about it. Talk to your doctor. Get a second opinion if you want. But please, let us help. I drove straight to Helen Walsh's house. My vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. Helen's car was in her driveway. The same silver sedan she'd driven for 8 years. I knocked hard on her door. She answered wearing her reading glasses and a cardigan, a book in her hand. Her face went from surprised to guilty in an instant. Did you really sign that statement? I demanded. Helen's eyes filled with tears. She stepped aside to let me in. Her living room looked the same as always, comfortable and cluttered, photos of her grandchildren on every surface. I'm so sorry, Paige. She sat down heavily on her floral couch. Crystal came to me 3 weeks ago. She offered me $5,000. $5,000 to betray me? Helen's hands twisted in her lap. My grandson, little Ethan, he needed surgery. The medical bills were crushing my daughter. We didn't have the money. Crystal said it was just paperwork, that it was to help you get treatment you needed. She made it sound like the right thing to do. You've known me for 15 years, I said. Do I seem like someone with dementia? No. Helen's voice broke. You don't. But Crystal showed me those medical reports, those photos, and I needed the money so badly. I told myself I was helping you. She looked up at me, mascara running. But I knew, Paige. Deep down, I knew something was wrong. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I left her house without another word. The betrayal cut deeper than Trevor's doubts, deeper than Crystal's lies. Helen had been my friend. We'd watched each other's homes when we traveled, shared recipes, celebrated holidays together, and she'd sold me out for $5,000. I drove to Dr. Hendrix's office. The address from the medical report led me to a medical building near the hospital, a nondescript glass and brick structure. I went to the third floor, found the office. The receptionist was young, efficient. She looked up from her computer with a professional smile. Can I help you? I'm Paige Hartwell. I need to speak with Dr. Hendrix about my records. Of course, Mrs. Hartwell. The receptionist typed on her keyboard. You have an appointment tomorrow at 2. I've never made an appointment here, I said. She turned her screen slightly toward me. Our records show you've been a patient for 9 months. Regular appointments every 3 weeks. I stared at the screen. There were my appointments, logged and noted. Someone had been coming here using my name. Someone had been building a false medical history. Can I see the sign-in sheets? I asked. From my past appointments? The receptionist hesitated. I can ask Dr. Hendrix to pull those records, but it will take a few days. Would you like to schedule a consultation? I left without answering. On my way out, I stopped at the pharmacy connected to the medical building. A different receptionist, this one older, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. I need to verify some prescriptions, I said, under my name, Paige Hartwell. She typed, nodded. Yes, we've been filling your memory medications since July. Let me pull up the records. She turned her screen. 3 different medications, picked up monthly. Who picked them up? I asked. She checked. Says here they were picked up by the patient. You showed ID each time. But I'd never been there. Someone was impersonating me. Someone with my ID, or a fake ID that looked like mine. Someone who looked enough like me to fool a busy pharmacist. I sat in my car in the pharmacy parking lot for 20 minutes, hands shaking. Crystal had been planning this for months, maybe since before she met Trevor. She'd created an entire false medical history. She'd paid off my neighbor. She'd manufactured evidence of incompetence, all to position herself to take control of the trust fund. And she was winning. My own son believed I was losing my mind. My friend had testified against me. There was a paper trail proving my incompetence that I couldn't fight because fighting it made me look more incompetent. I drove home as the sun set, painting the sky orange and purple. My house looked the same as always, a modest 2-story colonial with blue shutters. I'd lived here for 33 years. Raised Trevor here. Nursed my husband through his final illness here. And now it felt like even these walls were turning against me. The courier arrived 7 days after my meeting with Trevor. A young man in a brown uniform handed me an envelope marked with legal letterhead, waited for my signature, and left without meeting my eyes. Inside were papers. A petition for a restraining order, filed by Crystal Hammond on behalf of herself and Trevor Hartwell. I read the words 3 times before they made sense. Harassment, erratic behavior, threats. Crystal claimed I'd been showing up at their home unannounced, that I'd called 47 times in one day last Tuesday, that I'd sent rambling, incoherent emails at all hours. She described finding me in their apartment building hallway at 2 a.m. last week, confused and demanding to be let in. None of it was true, none of it. But attached to the petition were phone records showing calls from my number, email printouts from my address, and a still image from doorbell camera footage showing someone who looked like me at their door in the middle of the night. The hearing was scheduled for 3 days away. I couldn't afford a lawyer. My savings account held $32,000, but most of it was earmarked for property taxes and insurance. The attorney I called quoted me $5,000 just to appear at the hearing, with no guarantee of success. I showed up at the courthouse alone. The hearing room was small, institutional, with fluorescent lights that hummed and cast everyone in a sickly pallor. Crystal sat with Trevor and their attorney, a woman in an expensive navy suit with sharp eyes and sharper heels. I had a public defender, a tired-looking man named Frank Garrett, who'd glanced at my file for maybe 5 minutes before the hearing. He smelled like coffee and defeat. The judge was a woman in her 50s with gray-streaked hair and an expression that suggested she'd seen everything twice. She reviewed the petition, looked at me over her reading glasses, and asked Crystal to present her case. Crystal took the stand. She wore a pale blue dress that made her look young and vulnerable. Her voice trembled when she spoke. "Your Honor, I love Paige. I want to help her, but her behavior has become increasingly frightening. She describes showing up at their home at odd hours, confused about where she was, making accusations that made no sense. She pulled out her phone, showed photos of text messages I'd supposedly sent. The messages were bizarre, rambling, filled with paranoid accusations. I never sent those," I said, too loud. The judge held up her hand. "You'll have your turn, Mrs. Hartwell." Crystal's lawyer presented the phone records. 47 calls from my number to Trevor's phone on October 3rd. I'd been at a dental appointment that day. I had the receipt, but my public defender didn't ask to see it. Then came the doorbell footage. The screen showed a figure at Crystal's door at 2:17 in the morning. The woman was my height, my build, wearing a coat similar to one I owned. But the quality was poor, the face grainy and unclear. "That's not me," I said. The judge looked at the footage, then at me. "It's hard to tell from this quality." Crystal wiped her eyes. "She's gotten so much worse in the past few weeks. Her doctor says the disease is progressing. We're terrified she'll hurt herself, or hurt someone else." Trevor took the stand next. His testimony was worse than Crystal's. He described his mother as he'd known her, loving and sharp, then detailed her supposed decline, the forgotten birthday, the confused phone calls, the time he claimed to have found me sitting in my car in his apartment parking lot at midnight, unable to remember how I'd gotten there. I wanted to scream that he was lying, but he wasn't, not really. He believed every word. Crystal had convinced him so thoroughly that his own memories had shifted to match her narrative. When it was my turn to speak, my public defender stood with me. The judge asked if I had anything to say about the allegations. "None of it is true," I said. My voice shook. "I never went to their apartment at 2 in the morning. I never sent those messages. Someone is impersonating me. Someone is trying to make me look incompetent." Even as I said it, I heard how it sounded. Paranoid, delusional, exactly what someone with dementia might say. The judge asked about my medical treatment. I tried to explain that I'd never seen Dr. Hendricks, that someone else had been using my name. But without proof, without documentation, it sounded like denial. Crystal's lawyer produced the medical records, the pharmacy receipts, Helen's statement. She built a case that was ironclad and completely false. The judge took 15 minutes to decide. She granted the restraining order. I had to stay 500 feet from Crystal and Trevor. I couldn't call, email, text, or contact them in any way. Violation meant arrest and jail time. The order also meant I couldn't attend Trevor's wedding, scheduled for 3 weeks away. "You need help, Mrs. Hartwell," the judge said. "Not punishment. I'm ordering this protection for everyone's safety, including yours. I strongly suggest you seek immediate psychiatric evaluation." I walked out of the courthouse into cold October wind. Trevor and Crystal left through a different exit. I sat on a bench outside, the restraining order in my hands, and tried to figure out how my life had collapsed so completely. That evening, I went to the bank to withdraw money for groceries. My card was declined. I tried again, declined. I went inside and asked the teller what was wrong. She checked her computer, her face shifting to concern. "Your account has been flagged pending a competency investigation. All transactions are frozen until the investigation concludes." "Who ordered the investigation?" "A legal petition was filed yesterday." She showed me the paperwork on her screen. Crystal's lawyer had filed it, questioning my ability to manage my finances. Citing the restraining order, the medical records, the erratic behavior, I had $318 in cash in my wallet. That was all the money I could access. I drove home in a daze. My phone rang twice. I didn't recognize the numbers. I let them go to voicemail. Later, I listened to the messages. The first was from Sandra, my friend of 20 years. Her voice was cold. "Paige, I heard about the restraining order. I think you need to get help, professional help. I can't be involved in this. Please don't call me anymore." The second message was from another friend, Linda. Similar sentiment. She'd heard about my mental health issues and thought it best we didn't see each other for a while. Crystal had been busy. She'd told all my friends, painted me as dangerously unstable, and they'd believed her because why wouldn't they? There was a restraining order, medical records, a judge's ruling. I tried calling 3 other friends that night. None answered. 2 texted back later with brief, polite messages, suggesting I focus on getting better. By midnight, I sat at my kitchen table with the restraining order, the frozen bank account notice, and my phone showing a list of friends who no longer wanted to know me. Crystal had done it. She'd isolated me completely, cut me off from my son, my money, my support system. The trust fund paperwork sat in my desk drawer. It required my signature to transfer to Trevor after his marriage. Crystal needed me either to sign willingly or to be declared incompetent. And she was well on her way to the second option. I looked at the calendar on my wall. 20 days until the wedding. If Crystal married Trevor before I could stop this, she'd have legal standing to access family assets. And once she had what she wanted, she'd disappear. Women like her always did. I just had no idea how to fight someone who'd thought of everything. The envelope arrived by certified mail 10 days before the wedding. Inside was a notice of competency hearing scheduled for 6 days from now. If I was declared incompetent, Trevor would automatically become my conservator. All my assets, including the trust fund, would transfer to his control, which meant Crystal's control. I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by papers I couldn't quite make sense of anymore. Sleep had become something I did in fitful bursts, waking every hour to check the locks, to make sure no one was breaking in to plant more evidence. I'd lost 9 pounds. My clothes hung loose. With $200 of my remaining cash, I hired a private investigator. His name was Frank Morrison, and he worked out of a cramped office above a dry cleaner on the east side. He was maybe 65, with gray hair and the tired eyes of someone who'd spent a career in law enforcement. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, taking notes in a small leather notebook. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and studied me. "You know how crazy this sounds," he said. "I know, but I believe you." He tapped his pen against the notebook. "I've seen this before. Elder fraud, they call it. Usually it's caretakers or distant relatives. But sometimes it's someone who deliberately targets a family." He looked at my restraining order, at the medical records Crystal had manufactured. "This is sophisticated. Professional. Your daughter-in-law has done this before. Can you prove it?" He shrugged. "Maybe, if we have time and money. How much can you pay me?" "I have $200 right now. My accounts are frozen." He considered this, then nodded. "I'll start digging. But I can't promise anything fast." 2 days later, Frank called. His voice was excited, urgent. "Paige, I found something. Can you come to my office?" I drove across town, breaking the speed limit, hope fluttering in my chest like a trapped bird. Frank's office smelled like old coffee and paper. He had his computer open, documents spread across his desk. He turned the screen toward me. "Your daughter-in-law's name isn't Crystal Hammond, it's Christine Vaughn. She's got a criminal record in 3 states under different names." I stared at the screen. The photo was Crystal, maybe 5 years younger, with darker hair. The rap sheet listed fraud, identity theft, elder abuse. She served 2 years in Nevada for defrauding an elderly woman out of $400,000. Same pattern. She targeted the woman through her son, manufactured medical evidence, isolated the victim, then cleaned out her accounts. Frank pointed to another document. She was released on parole 8 months ago. She violated parole by changing her name and leaving the state. "This is it," I said. "This proves she's lying. We can show this to the judge." Frank's expression was cautious. "It proves she's a criminal. But we need more. We need to connect her directly to your fake medical records, to the impersonation. We need the woman she hired to pretend to be you. Can you find her?" "I'm trying. But Paige, we're running out of time. The hearing is in 4 days. I left Frank's office feeling hopeful for the first time in weeks. But that hope died before I made it home. A police cruiser sat in my driveway. An officer stood on my porch, talking into his radio. When he saw me, he approached my car. "Mrs. Payee Hartwell?" "Yes." "We received a call about a wellness check. Someone reported that you'd made threats to harm yourself." "I haven't made any threats to anyone," I said. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle." The next hour was a nightmare. The officer walked through my house, noting the empty refrigerator because I'd been too stressed to shop, the pile of unpaid bills on the counter because my accounts were frozen, my unmade bed and unwashed dishes. He saw exactly what Crystal had wanted him to see, evidence of someone unable to care for themselves. He strongly recommended I seek voluntary psychiatric evaluation. He didn't force me, but he made it clear that if someone called again, the next visit might not be voluntary. After he left, I checked my phone. I'd missed 3 calls from the bank. When I called back, they informed me that someone had attempted to remortgage my house. The application was flagged because of the competency investigation, but someone had submitted paperwork with my signature. I drove to the bank. They showed me the application. My signature looked perfect because it wasn't forged in the traditional sense. Someone had traced it from other documents. The notary stamp looked official. The application had been submitted 2 months ago. "Who submitted it?" I demanded. The banker checked. "It was submitted online, but the system shows it was verified in person by a woman matching your description. We have security footage." She pulled up the video. I watched a woman my age, my build, wearing a coat like mine and large sunglasses, sign paperwork at a bank desk. The video quality was good enough to see it wasn't me, but similar enough to pass a casual inspection. "Where did the money go?" I asked. The banker checked the account number. It was opened 3 months ago at a different branch. I can't access the details without authorization, but I could guess. The money went to an account Crystal controlled, probably under a fake name. Another piece of her plan falling into place. I left the bank and drove to Belmont's. It was early afternoon, between lunch and dinner service. The restaurant was quiet. I found Marcus in his office, reviewing invoices. When he saw me, his expression was pained. "Paige, I heard about the restraining order. None of it's true, Marcus." I handed him the printout from Frank's investigation. "Crystal's real name is Christine Vaughn. She's a convicted felon. She's done this before." He studied the documents, his face troubled. "This is serious. Have you shown this to the police?" "They won't listen. I have a competency hearing in 4 days. If I lose, she gets everything. Marcus, I need your help. I need a loan. Just enough to pay Frank to continue investigating. To hire a real lawyer." Marcus set the papers down carefully. "Paige, I want to help you, but Crystal and Trevor came to see me yesterday. They showed me the restraining order, explained about your condition." He looked genuinely sorry. "They said you might come here, might say things that sound convincing but aren't real. They're worried about you." "You know me," I said. "We built this restaurant together. Do I seem incompetent to you? You seem stressed, upset. And given your medical situation, I can't in good conscience loan you money. What if you're not in a position to pay it back? What if this really is the dementia talking?" It felt like the floor dropped out from under me. Marcus, one of the few people who knew me before all this, didn't believe me. "I'm sorry," he said. "I truly am. But I think the best thing I can do is encourage you to accept help. Let your son take care of you. Trust the doctors." I left Belmont's knowing I'd lost another ally. Crystal's web was complete. She'd thought of everything. I spent my last $100 consulting an attorney about fighting the competency hearing. She was honest in a way I almost appreciated. The paper trail was overwhelming. The medical records, the neighbor's statement, the restraining order, the financial mismanagement, the frozen accounts, my isolation. Everything pointed to someone unable to care for themselves. "Fighting it would cost $50,000 minimum," she said. "And even then, your chances aren't good." My advice? Accept conservatorship. Hope your son is kind. I drove home in the dark. My house felt enormous and empty. I sat at the kitchen table where I'd sat with my husband on his good days, where we'd helped Trevor with homework, where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays. This house held 33 years of memories, and I was about to lose it. Frank called that evening. "I found the woman," he said. "The one who impersonated you. Her name is Judy Brennan. She's an actress, works mostly local theater. Crystal paid her $10,000 to visit the doctor's office, pick up prescriptions, be seen on security cameras. Judy's willing to testify, but she wants witness protection and immunity. She's scared of Crystal, and arranging that needs lawyers, time, money we don't have. The hearing is in 4 days," I said. "I know." Frank's voice was gentle. "I'm not giving up. But you need to prepare for the possibility that we won't stop this in time." After he hung up, I sat in the dark kitchen for hours. The bottle of sleeping pills my doctor prescribed when my husband died sat in the bathroom cabinet. I'd never taken one, hadn't needed them. But tonight, the thought crossed my mind that taking all of them would solve everything. Crystal couldn't steal from a dead woman. Trevor would inherit naturally, and maybe eventually he'd realize what she was. I walked to the bathroom and looked at the bottle. 30 pills, probably enough. Then I thought about Crystal winning, about her walking away with everything, facing no consequences, about other families she'd destroy next. I put the bottle back in the cabinet. The morning of the competency hearing arrived cold and gray. I dressed carefully in a blue sweater and slacks, trying to look pulled together. My hands shook as I buttoned the sweater. 2 orderlies arrived at my door at 9. They wore plain clothes but carried paperwork from Cedar Hills facility. The judge had ordered a 72-hour psychiatric evaluation starting today. Based on that evaluation, he'd make his final competency decision. "Mrs. Hartwell," one of them said. "Not unkindly, we're here to escort you to Cedar Hills." "I know." I picked up my purse, Frank's investigation report inside. "I have one request. I need to stop somewhere first. 1 hour. Then I'll go with you peacefully." They consulted with each other, made a phone call. Finally agreed. 1 hour detour, supervised. I asked them to take me to Belmont's. We arrived at the restaurant at 10 in the morning. The dining room was empty, except for staff setting tables for lunch. The orderlies followed me inside, staying close but not touching me. Marcus emerged from the kitchen, surprise on his face. "Paige? What's going on?" "I need to talk to you. Privately. Just for a few minutes." He glanced at the orderlies, then nodded. We sat at a corner table. The orderlies positioned themselves nearby, watching. I told Marcus everything again. I made myself speak calmly, rationally, though my heart was racing. I explained about Crystal's real identity, about Judy Brennan the impersonator, about the systematic fraud. I pulled out Frank's report and placed it in front of him. "I know you don't believe me," I said. "But I need you to do one thing. Just one thing. Call the Nevada parole office. Verify that Crystal Hammond's real name is Christine Vaughn. Verify the fraud conviction. Please. I'm being taken for psychiatric evaluation today. If I can't prove this now, I lose everything." Marcus looked at me for a long moment. Something in my voice, my clarity this morning, made him hesitate. "All right. I'll make the call." He went to his office while I waited with the orderlies. The restaurant staff moved around us, polishing glasses, folding napkins. I watched the clock on the wall tick through 15 minutes, 20. Then the entrance doors opened and Crystal walked in. She was dressed for a wedding planning meeting, carrying a large binder with fabric swatches. She saw me and stopped. Her face went through several expressions before settling on concerned surprise. "Paige? What are you doing here?" The orderlies stood up. Crystal approached them, her voice warm with sympathy. "I'm so glad you found her. We've been so worried. Is she going to get help now?" "Ma'am, we're escorting Mrs. Hartwell to Cedar Hills for evaluation," one orderly confirmed. Crystal turned to me. "Paige, this is for the best. You need care. We love you. This isn't punishment." I stood up, facing her directly. "Your real name is Christine Vaughn. You're a convicted felon who violated parole." Crystal's smile didn't waver, but her eyes went hard. "This is exactly what I mean," she said to the orderlies. "These paranoid delusions. She thinks I'm someone else, that I'm trying to hurt her." She turned back to me, her voice dripping fake compassion. "Sweetheart, I'm Crystal. I love your son. I'm trying to help you." You hired Judy Brennan to impersonate me, I continued. You created false medical records. You paid my neighbor to lie. You've been planning this since before you met Trevor. Crystal pulled out her phone, her hands shaking theatrically. I need to call Trevor. She needs to be removed before she becomes violent. She already attacked me once. I never touched you. She lifted her sleeve, showing bruises on her forearm. Fresh bruises, purple and yellow. You did this last week when you broke into our home. Those orderlies shifted uncomfortably, moving slightly closer to me. I realized how this looked. A confused elderly woman confronting a young woman, making wild accusations, while scheduled for psychiatric commitment. Then Marcus's office door opened. He walked out, his face pale. He was still holding his phone. Crystal turned to him with relief. Marcus, thank goodness you're here. Paige is having an episode. Can you help us calm her down? Marcus looked at Crystal, like he'd never seen her before. I just spoke with the Nevada Department of Corrections, he said slowly. Christine Vaughn, convicted of elder fraud in 2021. Served 2 years, released on parole 8 months ago. Violated parole by leaving the state and changing her identity. The restaurant went silent. Staff members stopped working. The orderlies stared. Crystal's face transformed. The sweet concern evaporated, replaced by something cold and calculating. Then she recovered, laughed lightly. That's ridiculous. Marcus, someone's confused you. My name is Crystal Hammond. I've never been to Nevada. Marcus held up his phone. I have the parole officer on the line. She's been looking for you. She'll verify. Crystal's hands clenched. She looked at me, at Marcus, at the orderlies. Her mind was visibly working, calculating her next move. This is all a misunderstanding, she said. But I need to call Trevor right now. He'll clear this up. She pulled out her phone and dialed. Trevor, she said when he answered, her voice urgent and frightened. Your mother is at Belmont's harassing me again. She's making these insane accusations. She attacked me. Please come right now. I need you. She hung up and looked at the orderlies. She violated her restraining order. She's dangerous. You need to restrain her. One orderly moved toward me. Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us now. Wait, I said. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small recording device, an old one my husband used to use for work meetings. I've been recording since I arrived. Crystal's eyes widened. You can't record people without consent. Actually, I said, in this state I can. It's a one-party consent state. And I consented. I pressed play on the device. Crystal's voice filled the restaurant, tinny but clear. The recording caught her threats from 5 minutes ago, when the orderlies had briefly stepped outside to take a phone call and Marcus was in his office. In that moment, Crystal had leaned close and whispered that if I didn't go quietly to Cedar Hills, she'd make sure I never got out. She'd threatened to have me permanently committed, to make sure I died alone in a facility. It was all there. Her threats, her admission that she knew about Judy Brennan, her mistake of saying too much because she'd thought she'd won. The orderlies stopped moving. Marcus stared. Crystal stood frozen. Then the restaurant door opened again, and Trevor rushed in. He saw Crystal, saw his mother with the orderlies, saw Marcus's expression. What's happening? Crystal ran to him, tears instantly streaming. Trevor, your mother recorded me without permission. She's violating the restraining order. She's having a complete breakdown. You have to do something. Marcus walked over and held up his phone. I think you need to hear this. He played the recording for Trevor. We all watched Trevor's face as he listened to the woman he loved threaten to permanently commit his mother, as he heard her admit to hiring an impersonator. As he heard her real voice, stripped of sweetness, cold and calculated, Trevor's face drained of color. Crystal, what is this? Crystal grabbed his arms. Baby, she tricked me. She confused me. I don't know what I was saying. I'm stressed, I'm scared. Your mother has been stalking us. Trevor pulled away from her. He looked at Marcus. What did Nevada say? Marcus explained. The criminal record, the parole violation, the history of elder fraud. As he spoke, Trevor sank into a chair. Crystal tried again. Trevor, please, you know me. You love me. We're getting married in 4 days. What's your real name? Trevor asked quietly. Crystal. Crystal Hammond. Is it Christine Vaughn? She hesitated for just a second too long. Trevor saw it. Marcus was already calling the police. They arrived within minutes. Crystal tried to run, but Marcus's security team blocked the exits. She was arrested in the middle of the dining room where she'd planned her wedding reception. The officers found Judy Brennan's contact information in Crystal's phone, along with texts planning the impersonation. They found emails to Dr. Hendricks arranging the false medical records. They found the account where the house mortgage money had been transferred. The orderlies released me from their custody. The competency hearing was canceled pending a fraud investigation. Trevor stood in the middle of the restaurant, watching the police put Crystal into their cruiser. He looked at me, his face crumbling. "Mom," he whispered. "What have I done?" The police station was fluorescent bright and smelled like burnt coffee. I gave my statement to a detective named Maria Santos, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She recorded everything while taking notes. Crystal, or Christine, or whatever she's calling herself this week, was in a holding cell downstairs. Dr. Patricia Hendricks was being questioned in another room. They'd already picked up Judy Brennan for questioning. Trevor sat beside me, silent. He'd barely spoken since Crystal's arrest. When we finished at the station, he drove me home. We sat in my driveway for 10 minutes without moving. "I'm sorry," he finally said. His voice broke. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I believed her. I believed everything she said. I let her convince me you were losing your mind. I almost let her destroy you. She was good at what she did," I said. "Professional. You're not the first person she's fooled. But you're my mother." He wiped his eyes. "I should have known. Should have trusted you. Instead, I helped her. God, the things I said in court, the things I testified. You thought you were helping me." He shook his head. I was embarrassed. At the engagement party, when you asked for the manager, when Marcus said you were a founder, I felt ashamed that I hadn't known. "Crystal made me feel like you'd been lying to me my whole life, making up stories about your business success. She made me doubt every memory I had of you." "That's what she did best," I said. "She isolated people, made them doubt reality. How did you survive it? How did you not give up?" "I almost did," I admitted. "There was a night when I thought about taking a whole bottle of sleeping pills, but then I thought about her winning, about her doing this to another family, and I couldn't let that happen." Trevor looked at me. "You're stronger than I ever knew." I didn't feel strong. I felt exhausted, used up, hollowed out, but I'd survived. Over the next 2 weeks, the full scope of Crystal's operation came to light. Detective Santos kept me updated. Dr. Patricia Hendricks had been bribed $50,000 to create false medical records. She'd done it before, apparently, for other patients in similar schemes. She lost her medical license and faced criminal charges. Judy Brennan, the impersonator, accepted immunity in exchange for testimony. She'd been hired through a website for character actors, thought she was doing a legitimate job for someone researching elder care. By the time she realized it was fraud, she was already involved and scared. Crystal had threatened her family if she talked. Helen Walsh cooperated fully with the investigation. She returned the $5,000 Crystal had paid her and testified about how she'd been manipulated. Her grandson's surgery happened anyway. "I paid the bills myself." Helen cried when I told her, apologized until I had to tell her to stop. The bank reversed the mortgage fraud. My accounts were unfrozen. The restraining order was dismissed. The Nevada Parole Board issued a warrant for Crystal's arrest. Crystal faced charges in 3 states: fraud, elder abuse, identity theft, forgery, filing false police reports, perjury, and half a dozen other crimes. Her lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but with her history, prosecutors weren't interested in leniency. She was looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison. Trevor canceled the wedding. The venue, the flowers, the caterer, everything. He lost most of the deposits but didn't care. He moved out of the apartment he'd shared with Crystal and back into the house where he'd grown up, into his old bedroom with its high school trophies and faded posters. We had dinner together every night for 2 weeks. Slowly, awkwardly, we rebuilt what Crystal had broken. It wasn't easy. Trust, once shattered, doesn't heal quickly. One evening, Marcus called and invited us both to Belmont's. We sat at the owner's table, the one I'd built this place to have. Marcus brought champagne. To Paige, he said, raising his glass. To strength, to survival, to truth. We drank. The champagne was expensive, crisp. It tasted like victory but also like loss. I'd won, yes. But the cost had been high, months of my life. My relationship with my son. My sense of safety. My trust in people. Trevor worked through his guilt in therapy. He joined a support group for adult children who'd been manipulated by con artists targeting their parents. Turned out there were dozens of us in the city alone, hundreds across the country. Crystal's methods weren't unique, they were textbook. Frank Morrison became a friend. He refused payment for his investigation, said seeing justice done was enough. I hired him to help establish a foundation for elder fraud victims, funded partially by the trust fund I'd almost lost. We'd help people fight back against scammers, provide legal assistance, connect them with resources. Helen and I rebuilt our friendship slowly. She volunteered with the foundation, using her experience to help others recognize the warning signs of manipulation. Marcus offered to rebuy me into partnership at Belmont's. I declined. I was retired, truly retired now. But I visited often, and my table was always waiting. The trial happened 4 months later. I testified for 3 hours. So did Trevor, Helen, Judy Brennan, Dr. Hendricks, Frank Morrison, and a dozen others. The jury took 2 hours to convict Crystal on all counts. She was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. When the verdict was read, Crystal looked at me across the courtroom. For just a moment, her mask slipped completely. I saw rage there, pure and cold, but also defeat. She'd lost, and she knew it. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked how I felt. I said I was relieved, that I hoped sharing my story would help others recognize the signs of elder fraud. That families needed to talk openly about finances and trust, to verify everything, to question sudden changes. What Trevor and I didn't say to reporters was the private work we'd been doing. He'd been quietly researching Crystal's past, finding her other victims. There were at least 4 families we could identify, maybe more. We'd reached out to them, offered support, shared what we'd learned. Crystal had stolen over $2 million across her various schemes. Most of it was never recovered, spent, or hidden. But knowing they weren't alone, that someone believed their stories, helped those families heal. 6 months after the trial, Trevor met someone new. Sarah, a teacher, kind and genuine. I was terrified at first, watching him date again. But Sarah was different. She had her own money, her own career, her own life. She met me early on, asked questions about our family, showed genuine interest in my work with the foundation. She was patient with Trevor's trauma, understanding about his need to move slowly. I watched them together at dinner one night at Belmont's, the way Sarah laughed at Trevor's stories, the way he looked at her, hopeful but cautious. The way they both included me naturally in their conversation. Maybe we'd all be okay. 3 years after Crystal's arrest, I stood in the community center downtown, about to give a talk on elder fraud prevention. The room held maybe 50 people, mostly seniors, some with their adult children. Frank Morrison sat in the back, ready to answer questions about private investigation. Helen sat in the front row, offering moral support. I told my story, all of it. The humiliation at the engagement party, the fake medical records, the isolation, the restraining order, the moment I'd almost given up, and the recording device that saved everything. When I finished, hands shot up. People wanted to know warning signs, legal protections, how to fight back. We talked for 2 hours. Afterward, a woman maybe 70 approached me. She was crying. "Thank you," she said. "My daughter's boyfriend is trying to do this to me right now. Get me declared incompetent. I thought I was going crazy, but you just described everything that's happening to me." I gave her Frank's card, the number for free legal aid, information about protective services. I told her she wasn't alone, that she could fight back. This happened at every talk I gave. Someone would approach after, share their story, find relief in knowing they weren't crazy. The foundation helped 32 families in the first year. By year 3, we'd helped over 200. Trevor married Sarah in a small ceremony at Belmont's. I walked him down the aisle since his father couldn't. Sarah wore a simple dress and smiled with genuine joy. There was no drama, no massive guest list, no expensive production, just family and real friends, celebrating something true. They had a daughter 2 years later, named her Eleanor, after me. Eleanor Page. I held her in the hospital, this tiny person with Trevor's eyes and Sarah's smile, and felt something in me heal that I hadn't known was broken. The trust fund transferred to Trevor on his 40th birthday, as I'd restructured it. He and Sarah used part of it to expand the Fraud Prevention Foundation to help more families. The rest they invested for Eleanor's future, with protections in place that Crystal would have envied. I still went to Belmont's every week. Marcus and I had dinner together, two old friends who'd survived storms and come out stronger. Sometimes Trevor and Sarah joined us. Sometimes it was just Marcus and me, reminiscing about the early days, when we'd dreamed of building something lasting. Belmont's had lasted. 30 years now. We'd built something that endured. Helen came to dinners too. She'd become my closest friend again, that betrayal forgiven if not forgotten. We'd learned that friendship could survive mistakes if both people were willing to do the work. Crystal would be eligible for parole in 12 years. I didn't think about that much. She was part of my past, a chapter closed. I'd moved forward. Looking back now, I understood what Crystal had almost taken from me. Not just money or property, but my identity, my history, my relationships, my sense of self. She'd nearly convinced me I was losing my mind, and that's a special kind of cruelty. But I'd learned something too. I learned that strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting up again. It's about standing in your truth even when everyone calls you crazy. It's about fighting back, even when fighting seems impossible. I learned that documentation matters. Recording that conversation had saved me, but so had Frank's investigation, the phone records, the security footage. In fighting fraud, you need evidence. You need proof. You need to verify everything. I learned that isolation is the abuser's best weapon. Crystal had systematically cut me off from everyone who might have helped me. When you're fighting alone, you're vulnerable. Community matters. Witnesses matter. People who believe you matter. I learned that age isn't weakness. I was 68 when this happened, and people treated that as a liability. But my age meant experience. It meant I'd survived other hard things. It meant I knew the value of persistence. Crystal underestimated me because of my age. That was her mistake. Most importantly, I learned that family isn't just blood. It's trust, built over time and protected fiercely. Trevor and I lost that trust for a while. Getting it back required work from both of us. It required him acknowledging what he'd done, and me forgiving him for it. It required patience and time and difficult conversations. But we did it. We rebuilt what Crystal had broken. And in some ways, we were stronger for it. We talked more openly now. We verified information. We asked questions. We protected each other better. The foundation continued to grow. We'd helped over 500 families by year 5. We'd gotten laws changed in 3 states, requiring better verification for competency proceedings. We'd trained social workers, lawyers, and law enforcement on recognizing elder fraud patterns. I spoke at conferences, wrote articles, shared my story with anyone who would listen. Not because I enjoyed reliving it, but because silence helped predators like Crystal. Speaking up, making noise, refusing to be ashamed, that's how we fought back. On my 71st birthday, I sat at the owner's table at Belmont surrounded by family and friends. Trevor and Sarah, little Eleanor now 3 years old and full of questions. Helen and her daughter. Frank Morrison and his wife. Marcus, of course. My lawyer, who'd become a friend. 2 women from the foundation who I'd helped. Who'd fought their own battles and won. We raised glasses of champagne. Eleanor, who wasn't allowed champagne, raised apple juice and mimicked the adults with serious concentration. "To Paige," Marcus said. "To the strongest woman I know." They drank. I looked around the table at people who'd stood by me, who'd believed me, who'd helped me fight. At my son, who'd made mistakes but learned from them. At his wife and daughter, family I'd almost never known. At friends old and new, at a life I'd almost lost. I thought about that night 3 years ago when I'd held that bottle of sleeping pills, when giving up had seemed like the only option. When Crystal's victory had seemed inevitable, I'd chosen to fight instead, and I'd won. Not because I was special or particularly strong, but because I refused to disappear. Because I stood in my truth even when it seemed futile. Because one person, Frank Morrison, had believed me when everyone else thought I was crazy. Sometimes that's all it takes. One person who believes you. One piece of evidence that proves you're not lying. One moment where the mask slips and the truth comes out. And sometimes, the owner's table isn't about status or money or power. It's about belonging. It's about building something that lasts. It's about coming home to yourself after someone tried to erase you. I was home. Finally, completely home. The most powerful thing you can do is refuse to be erased. Refuse to be silenced. Refuse to disappear just because someone wants you gone. Stand in your truth. Fight for your reality. And trust that eventually, the truth will surface. Because it does. Maybe not immediately. Maybe not easily. But truth has a way of finding light. And when it does, you'll still be standing. Now I want to hear from you. Have you or someone you love ever faced manipulation or fraud from someone you trusted? How did you recognize the warning signs? What advice would you give to others in similar situations? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who's struggling right now. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more true stories about resilience, survival, and finding strength in difficult times. And please share this video with anyone who might benefit from hearing it. Elder fraud is more common than most people realize, and awareness is our best defense. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of this community. And remember, no matter how dark things seem, you are stronger than you know. Keep fighting. Keep standing in your truth. Keep refusing to disappear. Take care of yourselves, and take care of each other.